principle we are looking at is intensity. Several principles of learning have been identified by educational psychologists, providing insight into what enables people to learn most effectively. The first of these three principles, being readiness, exercise and effect, were developed by Edward Thorndike in the early 20th century. Since this time, 3 additional principles have been added as a result of experimental studies. These are primacy, recency and intensity. The principle of intensity states the more intense the material taught, the more likely it will be retained. A clear, dramatic or exciting learning experience will teach far more than a routine or boring one. Likewise, students tend to gain much greater understanding of tasks by performing them than by merely reading or hearing about them. Furthermore, Chickering and Gamson in 1987 compiled a list of 7 principles for good practice in undergraduate education, one of which is that good practice encourages active learning. The authors state that learning is not a spectator sport. Students do not learn much just sitting in classes, listening to teachers, memorising pre-packaged assignments and spitting out answers. They must talk about what they are learning, write about it, relate it to past experiences and apply it to their daily lives. They must make what they learn part of themselves. Many classes in higher education are taught by passive instruction, with students sitting and listening to a lecturer talk for hours at a time with little if any interaction. As it can be observed in these images, these students are being instructed in a passive manner. Reams of information are read to them from slides which they must in turn try to absorb and somehow comprehend. Whilst this style of learning works for some, it is generally not deemed an effective method of teaching. Students in such classes will tend to not pay attention to what is being said and lose interest quickly. Further problems arise with passive learning, such as a poor understanding of the relevant information, more class disruptions due to increased boredom, lower attention spans, poor exam performance, high student dropout rates, and most importantly, very little actual learning of the material once notes have been regurgitated for the purpose of the exam or assessment.
We propose the following changes to existing higher education classes. Intense active participation is a much better way of encouraging student learning. Class structure needs to be less formal to make more room for exploration and discussion. The lecturer needs to encourage active participation of the students and realise that more information does not necessarily mean more learning. As shown by these example images, to achieve these changes, the lecturer needs to break the class into small groups, have activities and projects to encourage group participants, have learners present to the group their ideas, encourage the learners to study together, and give the learners problem-solving tasks to complete. These new methods of instruction can be expected to result in greater amounts of learning, more in-depth thought, a more dynamic, therefore more interesting learning environment, greater student engagement with learning, and increased student attendance to lectures.